The resume came across my desk on a Tuesday morning in March. I was drinking my second coffee of the day, reviewing the stack of applications HR had sent up for the senior project manager position we'd been trying to fill for 6 weeks. 15 applications. Most of them qualified. A few exceptional. And then I saw the name, Derek Porter. My hand stopped halfway to my coffee cup. I set down the resume, picked it up again. Read the name 3 more times to make sure I wasn't imagining it, that my brain wasn't filling in letters that weren't actually there. But they were there. Derek Allen Porter. Age 39. Current employment status. Seeking new opportunities. Previous experience. Vice President of Operations, Porter and Porter Solutions, 2016 to 2021. Porter and Porter Solutions. The company we had built together. The company with both our names on it. The company he had stolen from me 5 years ago with a forged signature, a complicit lawyer, and 7 words I still heard in my sleep. You're nothing without me. You never were. I set the resume face down on my desk. I looked out the window of my office, 10th floor, corner view, the kind of office you get when you're VP of Strategic Development at a firm doing $340 million in annual revenue. The kind of office I'd built my way into over 5 years of 18-hour days and the specific kind of focus that comes from having something to prove. Then I picked up my phone and called Rebecca in HR. The Porter application, I said. The one for senior project manager. Move him to the top of the interview list. He's qualified? Rebecca asked. Very, I said. Schedule him for Thursday at 2 o'clock. I'll conduct the interview personally. I hung up. I turned the resume back over. I looked at my brother's name printed in 12-point Times New Roman at the top of the page. And I smiled. Not a happy smile. The other kind. The kind a man smiles when the universe has just handed him something he stopped believing he'd ever get. Welcome to Family Reckoning. I'm grateful you're here for this one. Before we go further, drop your state or country in the comments so I know where this story is reaching. Also, quick heads up, this story contains fictionalized elements for dramatic and educational purposes. Any resemblance to actual people or events is coincidental, but the lesson at the core, that's real. That's universal. Let's begin. Derek was 2 years older than me. Growing up, that gap felt enormous. He was the one who knew things first, who did things first, who set the template I was expected to follow. Our father used to say Derek was the engine and I was the caboose, which I think he meant as a compliment to both of us, but which always felt like I was the part of the train you could disconnect without affecting whether it reached the station. We were close anyway. That's the thing people don't understand about what came later. We were actually close. Not the performative kind of close where you claim brotherhood because you share DNA. The real kind. Late-night conversations. Shared ambitions. The belief that the two of us together could build something neither of us could build alone. In 2014, I was 31 years old, working as a project coordinator for a mid-sized construction management firm in Charlotte. Derek was 33, doing estimating work for a commercial contractor in Raleigh. We'd both been in the industry for nearly a decade. We both knew it inside and out. And we both knew we were making other people wealthy with our knowledge while collecting salaries that were good but not great. It was Derek's idea to start the company. He called me on a Sunday night in October. I've been running numbers, he said. If we combined our contacts, our expertise, pooled our savings, we could start our own construction management firm. Handle mid-size commercial projects. Undercut the big firms on price. Beat the small firms on professionalism. I was sitting on my couch in my 1-bedroom apartment, eating leftover Chinese food and watching a football game I didn't care about. How much capital would we need? I asked. $50,000 to start. Get us through the first 6 months while we build the client base. I've got $18,000 saved. If you've got close to that, we can borrow the rest. I had $22,000. Every dollar I'd saved in 9 years of working, living cheap, and not having anything else to spend it on. When do we start? I said. We filed the LLC paperwork in November. Porter and Porter Solutions. Both our names. Equal partners. 50-50 split on ownership, profits, decision-making. We signed the operating agreement at a FedEx office on a Tuesday afternoon. Derek brought a bottle of bourbon to my apartment that night, and we drank it on my couch and talked until 2 a.m. about the future we were going to build together. I can still remember the taste of that bourbon. Woodford Reserve. Derek had spent $60 on it, which felt extravagant at the time, and he'd said, "You only start your first company once. Do it right." We did it right. For 2 years, we did it right. The first office was a rented space in a business park off I-85. 800 square feet. 2 desks, 3 chairs, a printer we bought used off Craigslist. Derek handled business development and client relations. I handled project coordination and operations. We worked 70-hour weeks. We bid on every project we were remotely qualified for. We lost most of them at first because no one knew who we were. But some we won. Small jobs. A retail build-out in Gastonia. An office renovation in Concord. A warehouse expansion in Kannapolis. We delivered on time and under budget. We built a reputation. By the end of year 1, we'd done $340,000 in revenue. Net profit after expenses, $67,000, split evenly between us. Year 2, we did $890,000. We hired our first employee, a project assistant named Laura Vickers, who was organized and detail-oriented and made both of us better at our jobs. We moved to a larger office. We started bidding on bigger projects. Year 3, we crossed $1 million in revenue, $1.3 million. We hired 3 more people. We bought new trucks with the company logo on the side. We had business cards that didn't look like we'd printed them at home. Derek and I met for lunch every Friday at a barbecue place near the office. It became our ritual, a chance to step back from the daily operations and talk about the bigger picture, where we were going, what we were building. I remember one of those lunches specifically, February of 2017. We just closed a $240,000 contract, the biggest we'd ever landed. "This is working," Derek said, leaning back in the booth with a sweet tea in his hand. "This is actually working, Nathan." "It is," I said. "You know what the difference is?" Derek asked. "Between us and all the other guys who talk about starting something and never do it? What's that? We trust each other. That's the foundation. Trust. You can't build a company with someone you don't trust completely." I raised my tea. "To trust." Derek clinked his glass against mine. "To trust." 6 months later, he forged my signature on a document that transferred my 50% ownership to him and locked me out of the company I'd spent 3 years building. The betrayal happened over a weekend in August. I was in Tennessee visiting our mother, who'd been diagnosed with early-stage dementia the previous spring. I'd driven down on Friday afternoon, planning to stay through Sunday. Derek knew I'd be gone. I told him 2 weeks earlier. He'd said, "Take the time. Mom needs you. I'll hold down the fort." On Saturday afternoon, while I was sitting in my mother's living room helping her organize old photographs she kept forgetting she'd already organized, Derek was in Charlotte meeting with a lawyer named Russell Pence. I didn't know about Russell Pence then. I learned about him later during the lawsuit that went nowhere. What Derek did was this. He had Russell draft an amended operating agreement for Porter and Porter Solutions. The amendment restructured the ownership. Derek, 100%. Nathan Porter, 0%. The amendment cited voluntary transfer of ownership interest in exchange for settlement of capital account discrepancies, which was legal language for a transaction that had never happened. My signature appeared at the bottom of the document. It was a good forgery. Not perfect, but good enough that it would take a handwriting expert to prove it wasn't mine, and handwriting experts cost money I wouldn't have once Derek was done. Derek filed the amended operating agreement with the North Carolina Secretary of State on Monday morning. By the time I got back to Charlotte on Sunday night, it was already a matter of public record. I found out on Monday at 9 a.m. when I arrived at the office and my key didn't work. I tried it 3 times. Then I knocked. Laura Vickers opened the door. Her face was pale. "Nathan," she said quietly. "Derek said you don't work here anymore." I stared at her. "What?" He called a meeting this morning at 8 o'clock. He said there had been a restructuring, that you were no longer with the company. He said if you came by, I should tell you to contact his lawyer. The floor did something complicated beneath my feet. Where is he? I asked. In his office. I walked past Laura. She didn't stop me. Down the hallway to the office Derek and I had both used, though Derek had slowly started calling it his office over the past few months in a way I'd noticed but hadn't thought meant anything. Derek was sitting at his desk, looking at his computer. He glanced up when I walked in. His expression was calm. Not guilty. Not conflicted. Calm. We need to talk, I said. We don't actually, Derek said. It's handled. You'll receive paperwork from Russell Pence by the end of the week explaining the transition. What transition? What the hell are you talking about? Derek stood up. He was taller than me. 2 inches. It had never mattered before. Now he used it, standing at his full height, looking down. The company is mine, Nathan. As of this weekend, you're no longer an owner or an employee. The paperwork is filed. It's legal. If you have questions, talk to Russell. You can't just... I can, Derek said. And I did. You're a good worker, Nathan. You always have been. Detail-oriented. Reliable. But let's be honest about what this company is. I'm the one who brings in the clients. I'm the one who closes the deals. I'm the vision. You're the execution. And execution is replaceable. He sat back down. He looked at his computer screen like I'd already left. You're nothing without me, he said. Not cruelly. Matter-of-factly. You never were. I stood there for 10 seconds, maybe 15, trying to find words that matched the size of what had just happened. Couldn't. I left. I got in my truck. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, shaking, not from anger but from the specific physiological response of a person whose reality has just been rewritten without their permission. Then I called a lawyer. Comment still here if you're locked in. Let me know this is resonating. The lawsuit cost me $14,000 and accomplished nothing. My lawyer was a man named Tim Forrest, who specialized in business litigation and who explained to me in our third meeting that what Derek had done was technically fraud but practically very difficult to prove. The signature is forged, Tim said. I believe you, but Derek's lawyer will argue you signed it and forgot, or that you're lying to get leverage. Without a handwriting expert, and a good one costs $5,000 just for the analysis, we can't prove forgery to a criminal standard. Civil standard is lower, but still, it's your word against his and a document that's already filed and recognized by the state. So I just lose everything? I said. Not everything. We can sue for wrongful termination, for unjust enrichment, for breach of fiduciary duty. We can make noise. But Nathan, I need you to understand, this kind of litigation takes years and costs money you don't have. Derek knows that. That's why he did it this way. We settled 8 months later. Derek agreed to pay me $18,000, which he characterized as separation payment for services rendered. It didn't cover my legal fees. It didn't cover the 3 years I'd put into building Porter and Porter Solutions. It didn't acknowledge that he'd stolen anything. But it was all I was going to get. I signed the settlement agreement in Tim Forrest's office on a Thursday in April. When I walked out, I had $18,000, no job, no company, and a brother I would never speak to again. I sat in my truck in the parking lot. I called Derek's number. I hadn't called it in 8 months. He answered on the 3rd ring. Nathan, he said. His voice had the casual confidence of someone who'd won and knew it. I just signed the settlement, I said. Good. That's good. Clean break. You can move on now. You were right, I said. Pause. About what? I was nothing without you. I could hear Derek breathing on the other end. Then he said, quieter, almost kindly. I didn't mean it like that, Nathan. You're not nothing. You're just not a builder. You're a maintainer. And that's fine. There's a place for people like you. It's just not at the top. I hung up. Then I made a decision. 5 years. I would give myself 5 years to prove he was wrong. Not to him, to myself. 5 years to become the kind of person who didn't need Derek Porter to build something. The kind of person who could stand on his own. The kind of person Derek would one day have to look up to. I didn't know how yet, but I had 5 years to figure it out. The first year after the settlement, I worked 3 jobs. Morning. Project coordinator for a small general contractor in Huntersville. $42,000 salary. Steady work, nothing glamorous. Evenings. Freelance consulting. I put up a basic website offering construction management advice to small contractors who couldn't afford a full-time PM. $75 an hour. I got maybe 5 hours a week. Weekends. I taught myself software. Project management platforms. Scheduling tools. Building information modeling. Everything the industry was moving toward that I'd never had time to learn when I was running Porter & Porter. I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment that cost $650 a month. I drove the same truck I'd driven for 8 years. I didn't go out, didn't date, didn't spend money on anything that wasn't food, rent, or education. Every dollar above my expenses went into a savings account at the credit union. By the end of year 1, I had $11,000 saved. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Built without Derek. Built without anyone. Year 2, I got a better job. Project manager at a regional construction firm, Skyline Development Group. $68,000 salary. Real benefits. Real projects. I was good at it. Better than I'd been at Porter & Porter because I wasn't splitting my focus between operations and worrying about whether my business partner was going to screw me. I could just work. Just execute. My boss at Skyline was a woman named Patricia Odoms, mid-50s, 25 years in the industry, the kind of manager who noticed when you were good and told you so. 6 months into the job, Patricia called me into her office. "Nathan, you're doing exceptional work. I'm moving you to senior PM. Comes with a raise. $78,000. You've earned it." I thanked her. I didn't tell her what it meant. That it was $10,000 more than I'd ever made in a single year. That it was proof Derek had been wrong about at least one thing. I wasn't just a maintainer. I could grow. By the end of year 2, I had $34,000 in savings. Year 3, Patricia promoted me again. Led project manager overseeing a team of 4. $91,000 salary. I started speaking at industry conferences. Small ones at first. Regional construction management seminars. 20-minute presentations on scheduling efficiency, on cost control, on using technology to streamline workflows. People listened. Some of them hired Skyline because of those presentations. Patricia noticed. "You're good at this," she said after I spoke at a conference in Atlanta. The speaking, the thought leadership. Have you ever considered moving into a strategic role? Less field work, more big picture. I hadn't, but I did after she said it. By the end of year 3, I had $68,000 in savings and a new title, Director of Strategic Development. Year 4, Skyline was acquired by a national firm, Meridian Construction Group. The acquisition came with restructuring. Some people were let go. Some were absorbed into the new organization. I was offered a position at Meridian, VP of Strategic Development, oversight of project implementation across the Southeast region. Salary, $135,000 plus performance bonuses. I accepted. I moved to a better apartment. Not extravagant, just better. 2 bedrooms, one of which I turned into an office. I bought a new truck, a used 2018 Silverado with 40,000 miles. Paid cash. By the end of year 4, I had $97,000 in savings and a job title that made my father, who I still called once a month and who'd never fully understood what happened between Derek and me, say, "I'm proud of you, son. That's a hell of an accomplishment." Year 5, I was invited to speak at a National Construction Management Summit in Denver. 2,000 attendees. 40-minute keynote on integrating technology and traditional PM practices. The speech went well. Very well. I got a standing ovation, which surprised me, and afterward, 3 companies approached me about consulting opportunities. One of them offered me a board position, advisory role, $40,000 annually for attending 4 meetings a year and providing strategic input. I accepted. By month 58 of my 5-year plan, I was VP of Strategic Development at a firm doing $340 million in annual revenue, earning $182,000 in combined salary and advisory fees, and had $126,000 in savings. I had a corner office, a team of 12, a reputation in the industry as someone who understood the intersection of operations and innovation. And I had proven, to the only person whose opinion mattered, that Derek had been wrong. I wasn't nothing. I never had been. Drop 100 points if you're still locked in. We're getting to the good part. The resume arrived in month 60, March. 5 years exactly from the day I'd signed the settlement agreement in Tim Forrest's office. Derek Allen Porter. Seeking new opportunities. I read his work history carefully. Porter and Porter Solutions, VP of Operations, 2016 to 2021. The company had folded in 2021. I knew that already. I kept passive tabs on it over the years. Not obsessively. Just the occasional Google search. A LinkedIn check. The company had struggled after I left. Lost 2 major clients in 2019. Downsized in 2020. Dissolved quietly in 2021. After that, Derek's resume showed short stints at 2 different firms. Project manager at one for 8 months. Senior estimator at another for 11 months. Currently unemployed for 4 months. He was applying for a senior project manager position at Meridian. The position reported to me. I scheduled the interview for Thursday at 2 p.m. I told Rebecca in HR I'd handle it personally. She didn't ask why. I conducted interviews before. It wasn't unusual. On Thursday morning, I got to the office early. I prepared. I printed Derek's resume. I reviewed the job description. I wrote out standard interview questions on a notepad. Then I wrote one more question. The only one that mattered. At 1:55, Rebecca called. Mr. Porter is here for his 2 o'clock. Send him up, I said. I stood and walked to the window. 10th floor, corner office. View of uptown Charlotte. The same city where Derek had locked me out of our office 5 years earlier and told me I was nothing. At 2 o'clock, there was a knock on my door. Come in, I said. The door opened. Derek walked in. He was looking down at his phone, distracted, the way people do when they're nervous and trying not to show it. Then he looked up and saw me. His face did something I will remember for the rest of my life. Not shock exactly, deeper than shock. The complete recalibration of a person's reality in real time. Nathan, he said, barely audible. Derek, I said, have a seat. He didn't move for a moment. Then he sat, slowly, in the chair across from my desk. I sat down. I picked up his resume. Thank you for coming in, I said. I've reviewed your application. You've got solid experience. I do have a few questions. Derek was staring at me. He hadn't spoken since saying my name. First question, I said. I see Porter and Porter Solutions closed in 2021. Can you walk me through what happened there? Derek's jaw tightened. It was... The market shifted. We lost some key clients. COVID didn't help. You were VP of Operations, correct? Yes. That's interesting, I said, because I was under the impression you were the owner. The sole owner, in fact, after the previous co-owner left the company. Derek said nothing. What happened to that co-owner? I asked. If you don't mind me asking. Nathan. It's a professional question, Derek, relevant to understanding your work history. His hands were clenched in his lap. We had a disagreement. He left. I bought him out. Bought him out, I repeated. Is that what you call it? Silence. I set down the resume. I leaned back in my chair. Here's my real question, I said. 5 years ago, you told me I was nothing without you, that I was just execution, replaceable. Do you remember that? Derek's voice was quiet. Yes. Do you still believe that? He looked at me. For the first time since he'd walked in, he actually looked at me. The office. The title on my door. the city visible through the window behind me. "No," he said. "Why not?" "Because you're sitting where you're sitting. And I'm sitting where I'm sitting." I nodded slowly. "That's the right answer." I picked up his resume again. I made a show of looking it over one more time. "You're qualified for the position," I said. "Your experience is relevant. Under normal circumstances, I'd move you to the next round." Derek's expression shifted. Something that might have been hope. "But these aren't normal circumstances," I said. "You forged my signature. You stole a company I built with my own hands. You threw me out and told me I was nothing. And now you're sitting in my office, applying for a job that reports to me, asking me to give you an opportunity." I set down the resume. "So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to reject your application. You're not going to work here. Not for me. Not in this building. Not in any capacity." Derek's face went pale. "But," I continued, "I'm going to tell you something I wish someone had told me 5 years ago. You're not nothing, Derek. You're just not what you thought you were. You're a decent project manager. You're a mediocre businessman. And you're a terrible brother. But you're not nothing." I stood. The interview was over. "There are other jobs. Other companies. You'll land somewhere. It won't be here. But you'll land." Derek stood slowly. He looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe apologize. Maybe argue. Maybe beg. He didn't. He just nodded once and walked toward the door. When he reached it, I said, "Derek." He turned. "You were wrong," I said. "I wasn't nothing without you. I was just getting started." He left. The door closed behind him. I sat back down at my desk. I looked at his resume one more time. Then I fed it into the shredder beside my desk and watched it turn into thin strips of paper that meant nothing. My phone buzzed. "Rebecca from HR. How'd the interview go?" "Not a fit," I said. "Move on to the next candidate." "Got it," she said, and hung up. I turned to the window. The city stretched out below me. Charlotte. The same city where I'd lost everything. The same city where I'd built it back. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt quiet. The way you feel when a question you've been carrying for 5 years finally gets answered and you realize the answer doesn't change anything except your understanding of the question. Derek wasn't nothing, but he wasn't what he'd needed to be, and I didn't need his validation anymore to know what I was. I was a man who'd been betrayed by someone he trusted completely and had decided that wasn't going to be the last chapter. I was a man who'd spent 5 years proving to himself that he could build something alone. Something real. Something that couldn't be forged or stolen or taken away by a lawyer with a fake signature. And I was a man who'd just had the opportunity to destroy his brother and had chosen something more complicated instead. Not mercy. Not forgiveness. Just the recognition that revenge, when you finally get it, doesn't taste like you thought it would. It just tastes like the end of something, and the beginning of something else. If this story reached you, I need to hear from you. Leave a comment. Tell me where you are in your story. Have you been betrayed by someone you trusted? Are you in year 1 of your 5-year plan? Year 3? Are you sitting across the desk from someone who told you that you were nothing, finally able to prove them wrong? Here's what I learned in 5 years. 1. The people who betray you are telling you who they are. Believe them the first time. Don't wait for a second lesson. 2. Being told you're nothing is only true if you accept it. I didn't accept it. I used it as fuel, as motivation, as the thing I proved wrong every single day for 5 years. 3. Revenge, when it comes, never looks like you think it will. I thought I'd feel powerful turning Derek down. Mostly I just felt tired. Tired of carrying it. Ready to put it down. For you don't rebuild to prove someone else wrong. You rebuild to prove yourself right. That you're more than what they said. That you can stand alone. That their opinion was never the foundation you were building on. 5. 5 years is long enough to become a completely different person. Use them wisely. These stories aren't easy to tell. But I tell them because somewhere out there is someone who just got betrayed. Who just got told they're nothing. who's sitting in their truck in a parking lot wondering if they'll ever build anything again. You will. Not the same thing. Something better. Something that's completely yours. Built on a foundation that can't be forged or stolen or signed away by someone you trusted. 5 years. That's all it takes. 5 years of showing up. Of doing the work. Of becoming the person who can sit in that corner office and reject the application of the person who destroyed you and feel nothing but quiet certainty that you were right to bet on yourself. If this reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Family Reckoning so you never miss a story like this one. Comment below. Tell me what you're building. Tell me who told you that you were nothing and how you're proving them wrong. Thank you for staying to the end. It means everything. One final note. Some elements of this story are fictionalized for narrative and educational purposes. If that's not your style, I understand. But the core truth that you can be betrayed, destroyed, and still rebuild into something stronger, that's real. That's always real.